Carl Erskine from Anderson, Indiana, was admired by his teammates and adored by the fans. Erskine pitched 2 no-hitters, won 20 games in 1953, and set a record by striking out 14 Yankees in 1 game of the 1953 World Series. And he was blessed with the name that best suited the unique Brooklynese tongue, Erskine. Hey, Erskine, we're with you.
Some writer said to me one time, he said, you know, Larson wasn't the first guy to pitch 9 no-hit innings in a World Series game. I said, really? That must have happened a long time ago. He said, well, you were there. No, I didn't. That didn't come to me. But you know what? Actually, another guy researched, Babe Ruth pitched a game, I don't remember the year now, but he pitched a 14-inning game, and he had 10 no-hit innings. Every time he's Ruth, he beat you. I mean, he had the 14-inning game, which he won like 1-0 or something. There were 10 innings, not consecutive, but 10 of the 14 innings were no-hit innings. So, anyway.
For Paul's benefit, and I love how you tell the story, could you tell us a little bit more about that Bobby Thomson game and the best pitch you ever threw?
Yeah, that story's been around too, but well, there's always a lot of speculation. You know, how did they pick Branca? Why did they take Newcomb out? We were leading 4-1 going into the 9th, and Nuke, of course, was a strong pitcher and had pitched real strong in the 8th inning, so there's no indication he was tired. But in the 9th, there were a couple of ground balls that got through the infield. They were just routine ground balls that they got through. Then Lockman doubled. That scored a run, put 2 men on. Then they got the bullpen up. So they got Branca and me up throwing. And Dressen called the bullpen then eventually and said, are they ready? And Suki said, yeah, they're both ready. Erskine's bounced his curve occasionally. So let me have Branca. Well, I threw this hard overhand curveball at Campanella used to tell me, bury it, bury it. You don't want to hang that, you know, you got to keep it down. Broke straight down, and to be a real good pitch, you just have to bury it right at the guy's shoes, you know, so you'd occasionally bounce one. Well, in the Polo Grounds, there's a huge amount of space from home plate clear back to screen. It's a big area. And I don't know, no one ever asked Dressen that I ever read, or I never asked him, did that have any influence, because Campanella was not catching. He was hurt, and Rube Walker was catching. Rube, as the old Texan told me one time, was slower than pond water. He was just real slow afoot. And if Dressen says, boy, we don't want any wild pitch with Erskine in there and Walker, who take forever to get to the screen, let me have Branca. Now, I don't know if that was the reason, but whatever the reason, that bouncing the curveball comment, he says, let me have Branca. So Ralph came in, warmed up, and Thompson was a low fastball hitter. The first pitch Ralph threw was a low fastball, right down the gut, and Thompson took it. Well, we all went, oh, Ralph, oh, God, don't pitch him down there, Ralph. And so now the next pitch is up and in, right where it should be, and Thompson fights it off, hits a sinking line drive into the lower deck of the Polo Ground. So now the game's over, this pennant's over, we're taking this bitter loss, and you know, and this infamous incident hangs on forever. So when people say to me, Carl, what was your best pitch? I'd say, I think it was that curveball I bounced in the bullpen.
The Giants had trailed the Dodgers by 13.5 games on August 11th, but then began a breathtaking run for the pennant, winning 37 of their last 44. They tied the Dodgers on the last day of the season, and it's now the bottom of the 9th in the 3rd and final playoff game. New York has just scored, but the Dodgers still lead 4-2 with 1 out. Runners are at 2nd and 3rd. Dodger reliever Ralph Branca is pitching to Bobby Thomson, and baseball history is about to be made. Here's how Giant broadcaster Russ Hodges described the action.
Branca throws. There's a left back. I say me, I believe. The Giants won the pennant. 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 Bobby Thomson hits into the lower deck of the left field stand. The Giants won the pennant, and they're going crazy.
once listening to a Dodger game, and I'm sure it was a road game, and Preacher Rowe hit a home run.
Yeah.
And that was a very rare event. And my recollection of it is listening to maybe it was Vin Scully, maybe it was Red Harbor, say the Dodgers have come out of the dugout and put a path of towels
True.
from home plate to the dugout for
Right.
Preacher Rowe, because
True.
it was his only home run.
That's true. I was in Pittsburgh. Had in Pittsburgh, I think the pitcher was Murray Dixon, little right-hander. Well, Preacher hit the home run, the bench, then they started really going wild, and they did lay towels all the way up to the home plate, so Preacher comes back. Well, Preacher was a fine, outstanding pitcher, but he's a real interesting personality. He was just very likable, still is. And so he gets in the clubhouse after the game, the writers all come around, they want to know. He said, Preacher, did you know it was gone when you hit it? He said, fellas, how do I know it was gone? I never hit one before. Well, anyway, they made a lot out of Preacher. But I remember, that's interesting, you remember that home run. That was his only home run.
Yeah.
And
I once had a baseball card for Preacher Rowe, and it showed one home run on it.
yeah, right.
And I remember listening.
Yeah, that was it, yeah. Preacher lives in West Plains, Missouri. He's in his early 80s, pretty good health. His wife's health's not real good. I call him periodically. He was kind of our mentor, when I got on the club. We didn't have pitching coaches in those days who were pitchers. It was kind of interesting, but that didn't change until, I don't know, mid-50s or so. They started actually putting former pitchers to handle the pitching staff. Before that, it was kind of, the pitchers were kind of looked at as necessary, but a little spacey guy. I mean, they look at the guy and said he got a sore arm. The guy on the training table's got a big strawberry, like this, all oozing, and oh my, that's bad. Here's a guy who's got a pulled muscle on his shoulder. It's not bleeding, there's no bone sticking out, and you can't see. It looks just like it did yesterday when he was throwing hard. So then they look at the pitcher's eyes. Yeah, you guys, you're all psychos or something. I mean, there wasn't that kind of feeling about every pitcher, but I mean, pitchers were kind of relegated as kind of special guys. We got to have you, and run. That's all the old timers could do. Run, keep your legs in shape, throw. Bert Schotten told me, he's an old timer, I pulled a muscle in my shoulder. His remedy was go out to the flagpole and throw straight up at the flag, and you'll work it out. Can you imagine a sports medicine guy telling Roger Clemens? He said, I got a little thing here in my arm. Go out and throw it at the flagpole. Well, those old wives' tales and remedies for pitchers' arms, because there wasn't any science to what was wrong with an arm. Now, if a guy had a bone chip, once in a while they could go in and do that. But the pitching in those days, the young guys went to the older pitchers, and I'd go to Preacher. Preacher and I got good buddies. We fished together in the off season, but he was a master at being in control of the ball game. He didn't walk anybody. Always around a plate. He had this technique of psyching the hitter out. He had a spitball. He threw a spitball, which is of course illegal, but he used that more effectively when he didn't throw it, because everybody thought it was coming on every pitch, and they were always calling for the ball, and it'd take forever to Preacher pitch a game because everybody thought he was going to throw him a spitter every pitch. But he would only work it in occasionally, but he had a good one. But anyway, he was an interesting man.
Reading in your book, under the term Forbes Field, you talk about the day that you were called up to the Dodgers on July 25th, 1948, and you joined the team in Pittsburgh.
Right.
And they had a little fun at your expense.
Yeah, well, I didn't know anybody. I'd pitched against a big club in spring training, and Jackie had come over to me after the game. I pitched 4 or 5 innings in Fort Worth, Texas, because I was on their roster in the early part of that season. Jackie came over after the game. He said, "Young man, you're not going to be with us. You can be here very long. You're going to be with us." Throwing that kind of good stuff. Well, sure enough, by mid-season, they'd call me up. So I joined him in Pittsburgh, and I didn't know anybody. I didn't recognize anybody even, and so out on the big porch of the Shenley Hotel, early in the afternoon before a night game, an afternoon game, but it was a late morning. The guys were just kind of waiting there until time to go to the ballpark. A lot of big rocking chairs. So I walk out there not knowing anybody, and I said to the first guy, I think it turned out to be Billy Cox, but I didn't know him. I said, "Excuse me, how do you get to Forbes Field?" And they all kind of looked at me, and I got my duffel bag, and they knew I'm some green kid just joining. They said, "Oh, you take a cab." So I go down, hail a cab. I'm down in front of everybody. So I get into a cab, and the cabbie says, "Where are you going, buddy?" "Forbes Field." He says, "Where?" Now I knew something was kind of fishy. I look up at the porch, they're all laughing, breaking up there. Forbes Field's only a half a block around the corner. Right around the corner. You can't see it, but you walk around this building and there's Forbes Field. So I had to get out of the cab and take a hike.
Who was your toughest out?
You know, I pitched a lot of innings against the Cardinals, so I faced Musial a lot. I had pretty good luck with the Cardinals. I had quite a few wins against the Cardinals. Musial seemed to always manage to get his hits. I mean, so the good fortune that I had was Shandines and Slaughter hit just ahead of Musial, and I got both of those guys out pretty good. But Musial was a contact hitter, and the toughest guy to pitch to, compared to Mantle, who you could strike out. It was tough to strike Musial out. He'd hit the ball someplace, not always hard, but if he got 4 for 4, chances are 3 of them were line shots someplace, and the 4th hit would be a nub or a dribbler or a bloop or something. But he always got the bat on the ball, so he was the kind of hitter that was, and he hit to all fields. Was tough to position to play him, and so he was. Mize had to be one of the best hitters of that era. I didn't face him near as much.
He got one in Game 5.
He got that big one. I told somebody the other day, I was watching the game when Dennis Eckersley was pitching to Kirk Gibson. I was on TV. He threw the same lousy pitch that I threw to Mize. Honest to God, I saw that and I got hurt all over again. I mean, but I was happy for the Dodgers that Kirk Gibson hit it. But I thought Dennis Eckersley had 3 other pitches that were better than the one he threw at that situation. And then I heard Kirk Gibson very recently say that the scouting report said that if you're a left-handed hitter and Dennis Eckersley gets 2 strikes on you and then you waste one or something, he's going to throw you his backup slider, they call it, which is a slider, but it doesn't do the conventional break. It kind of goes the other way. And he said, if he gets 2 strikes on me, and he had a fastball that Gibson could not get around on because he was hurt, his leg was very unstable. Well, this backup slider that he got and hit, he was looking for it, he said. And that's interesting. I had never heard that. But it was the weakest pitch in his repertoire. Well, I threw one of those. Worst pitch I had is what Mize hit. And what happened then, I pitched the rest of the ball game. We eventually won it in 11 innings. But I pitched so much that day that I had a blister. I broke it on the last pitch of the game. It kept me from having another start. And that series went 7 games. And who knows? If I'd have had a conventional finish, pitched 9 innings, because I had good stuff that day, and pitched well in every inning except that 5th. And I mean, I didn't pitch bad in the 5th either, except the ball Mize hit was the only ball was hit hard. And but anyway, that cost me another start, and who knows? We ended up losing in 7 games.
Kind of a gutsy thing for Dressen to leave you in, giving up 5 runs in 1 inning.
Nobody could believe it, including me. But well, he came to the mound. He said, "You okay?" And I, was totally disgusted because I had a 4-run lead and was pitching real well. And he said, "Well, Mize's ball is the only ball that has been hit hard off of you." So he left me the game, to my surprise. So I thought he was going to use a pinch hitter. And then when my turn came to hit, he said, "No, you're my hitter. Go ahead, hit." So he left me in the game. We tied it then, I think, in the 7th. And then the game went 11 innings. And Snyder had driven in a run in the top of the 11th, and it stood up. So we ended up winning the game. But I had to pitch a lot of extra innings, so a lot of pitches, and I never had a blister in my life until that game. And I had 2 strikes and a ball on Barra, and I noticed it. I hadn't noticed it before. And I had this right here, about just a pad on that finger, had now developed this blister, and it was partially broken. It wasn't open, but it was partially open. Campanella gave me a sign for curveball, and I threw this good overhand curve. Barra took it for strike 3. That was the end of the game, but that blister broke completely open. I couldn't have thrown another pitch. But that was down to the, I mean, it was bright red. It was down, all that skin was gone. They put new skin on it and tried to do everything, benzoin to toughen it, or whatever, so I could pitch again.
And the rotation would have had you...
I would have pitched another start. It turned out I relieved in one game, 1 or 2 innings, and pitched with this partial blister. It had, of course, snatched a couple days later. I hadn't healed yet. But I did get through a couple innings with it, but I couldn't have started. But that one pitch changed the complexion of that World Series in a way, but that's what happened.
I remember in that game were there a couple of real circus catches?
Oh yeah, Snyder made a catch, deep right center. Pafko,
leaping in front.
Mize hit another shot off of me after that Pafko caught in right field.
I was watching that game.
But there was a lot of exciting plays in that game. Right, you're right.
I was watching that game with 2 Yankee fans, my father and my brother.
Were you? Oh yeah.
And I just remember it.
That was one of the most exciting games
Yeah,
in series play. And one of the things that happened somewhere along the line, Ewell Blackwell was a starting pitcher in that game. And there's some sidelights that never made the papers much, but in the early part of the game, Schuba was on third base, and 1 out, and I was a hitter. And Dresden put the squeeze on. And I was always a pretty good bunter. So Schuba was not a real good base runner. Schuba was a good hitter. I mean, he was a pure hitter. But his defense and his base running were marginal. Well, he's on third base. You've got to time that squeeze play and let the pitcher get in his delivery far enough that he can't change his delivery. Well, Ford was the pitcher. Blackwell was a pitcher. And so I know the squeeze is on. I gave a sign back to Charlie that I got it. And so now you can seal the bunt as long as you can. You don't square around on a squeeze play like you would have sacrificed. So I concealed as long as I could, waited. Well, it fooled Schuba. He didn't think I was going to bunt. And so instead of coming home the way he should have in a dead run, he came halfway and stopped. I laid down a good bunt, and it was to the right of Blackwell, and Blackwell sprawled out on the infield to even get to it, and threw it this way, and if Schuba had been running, he'd been in the dugout by that time. And they threw Schuba out. And when I got to first base, Jake Petler was a coach, I thought we scored a run. I got an RBI in the World Series. Man, I was feeling good. And he said, Schuba's out. How could he be out? I mean, it took forever for Blackwell to get to the ball and throw it. But Schuba had stopped and screwed up the squeeze play. Anyway, then later in the game, Johnny Sane relieved Blackwell. And we go into some inning somewhere, I don't remember what inning it was, 7th, 8th inning.
This picture was on the front page where the ball was outside of his mitt, and
right.
He was standing on first base.
Right, his foot's in the middle of the bag and the ball is still here with Hodges. But Art Passarella was the umpire at first base, and Robinson was playing second. Sane was a good hitter. Sane hit this ground ball up the middle, and Robinson made a play, got to the ball, and then made this long throw, and that was the end of the play. Then the ball is here, and Saints crossing the bag. Well, Art Passarella was in a position like this to see. He's out in the infield. He's in a position to see the runner and all that, and he made this kind of a knee-jerk move, like he went like he didn't intend to, but he half did it. Then he weakly went on and called him out. He was not out. I mean, technically, he was not out, but
Right.
officially, he was out. Well, I don't know if you've read my little book or not, but,
You've autographed it for me.
oh, okay, well, that story's in there because Sane, well, Bill Dickey was the first base coach, and he and Sane argued. I mean, they went into orbit over that play, but the out stood naturally. So that was one of 19 consecutive outs, and so the next day, Sane was waiting for me, and under the stands, and oh, he was crybabying about that play. You lucky little so-and-so, you lucky little so-and-so. Well, I remembered in 1948, if you read that in there, I don't know if you read the story.
I haven't read it, no.
Okay. He was getting on me big time, Sane was, about how lucky I was, you lucky little so-and-so. And so this just came to my mind. I said, Johnny, let me ask you a question. You beat Feller 1-0 in the 48 World Series. And Feller and Boudreau picked Phil Macy off second base from here to the over yonder. He was so far off, and Bill Stewart called him safe. He scored on the next base hit, and you beat Feller 1-0. What goes around comes around. So anyway,
What was it like when Sal Maglie, who was, your eternal enemy,
Yeah.
joins the team?
strange. One day I was at home in Brooklyn, and Buzzy Bavasi, our general manager, called me at home. He said, Carl, the Giants had traded Maglie to Cleveland. He was in the American League. This was in 55. And so in early 56, Buzzy called me and said, Carl, what would you think if we could get Maglie? What do you think about that? Maglie? You must be kidding. They'll kill him in Brooklyn. He said, no, he's at Cleveland, and he said, we've got a chance to get him. He's been around a while. And I said, well, is he healthy? Is he okay? And he said, as far as we know, he's healthy. I said, well, he's one of the best pros in the game. I mean, he's outstanding. I always admired Maglie because he took charge of the ball game, man. He really. And so they got Maglie, not necessarily on my say, but we did get Maglie. It was a strange sight to see him in the Dodger clubhouse with blue and white on.
Yeah, right.
How did Robinson?
No, there was never it was kind of, there's a difference. I'll bet you the law profession is like this. When you guys go to court and you battle some guy tooth and nail and you cuss him out in your mind or maybe for real and you hate his guts professionally, but you don't really personally. That's kind of the way it was. We respected Maglie as a good pro, and we hated his guts as a Giant pitcher professionally. But when he came over and he's part of our team, none of that carried over. He's now, respected for his skills. And Maglie had an outstanding year for us in 56. So, and nobody remembers that he pitched a 5-hitter and allowed a couple runs in the Larson game. It was a perfect game. He pitched a game he should have won, but he picked the wrong day. Well, Maglie was a real pro, and he died in Buffalo.
Oh yeah, he grew up in Niagara Falls.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I used to check on him. He was in a nursing home up there last year's, and really tough shape.
And parenthetically, played professional baseball in Jamestown, New York.
Really did. I'll be darned.
We're very proud to lay claim to.
Yeah,
There's a Sal Maglie Stadium in Niagara Falls.
I'd heard that.
Yeah.
I played in Buffalo once. They sent me to rehab my shoulder to the Dodger affiliate in Montreal, which was AAA, when that was International League. And I remember playing in Buffalo and pitching against Buffalo in Montreal. But I wasn't in that league very long, a couple months.
Well, Buffalo has had a lot of the major leaguers come through too. Luke Easter and Johnny Bench.
Right.
So they've got the real tradition as well.
Yeah. I bought a shotgun in Buffalo one time. I bought an little Ithaca pump gun, 16 gauge.
Do you still live in Anderson?
In Anderson, yeah.
I'm gonna cut this off here because I'm gonna get you back so we check out, and then we're gonna go off to the luncheon. Luncheon starts at 11:30.
I'll meet you there.
Yep, well, sure. If you wanna tag along, that's fine also.
Well, your reception was waving at me, so I think.
You're married to Parsons or something. Great. You're the best. And you were gracious last night, not only from beginning to end and all the foibles, and you'll go down in history for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is your front page activities.
Well,
In the 8th inning, we had the 8th inning stretch.
That'll make a sporting news. That's got to.
General Manager David Wellenzone was very excited about having a unique experience of the 7th inning stretch being played by Carl Erskine on his harmonica with the famous Take Me Out to the Ball Game. However, what happens next is a bit of minor league history. Note the perspiration on General Manager Wellenzone as he explains the circumstances.
Calling market 7th inning stretch, and we have a special guest this evening. Once again, Mr. Carl Erskine on the harmonica. Let's all join in and sing Take Me Out to the Ball Game.
We have a new invention, the top of the 8th stretch. Everybody get up and join our friend Carl Erskine from the Brooklyn Dodgers as he plays Take Me Out to the Ball Game. Gentlemen, from the 57 Dodgers, Carl Erskine, the top of the 8th stretch. When in doubt, buddy, make it up.
Only in minor league baseball.
Showbiz, right? When in doubt, make it up. I'll tell you what, gentlemen.
Not only is it the first Dodger team back, it's the first time in the top of the 8th that the home crowd stood and sung and they Take Me Out.
Telling as Greg said, only in minor league baseball.
Anything goes, right? Super. Hey, they were singing. I could hear them.
Oh, sure.
They were on top of you.
You know what? We prepped them in that inning before. They were ready now.
Good job.
Oh, that's great.
Just to the top of the ninth.
All right, let's keep it inventing.
Yeah, no, we're here. Let's do it every half inning.
I just got to figure out what sponsor I offended when I just bumped him the first game of the year. I want to be apologizing for that.